in Cleveland at the Quicken Loan Convention Center site of this evening's big debate. Joining me now, Representative Louie Gohmert from the 1st District of Texas, Republican. Representative Gohmert, great to have you with us, sir.
Always good to talk to you. Thank you.
Boy, we got a lot to talk about, Congressman Gohmert, in the short period of time that we have. Let's start with, immigration. It's going to be a big issue, certainly, in tonight's debate. I want to get your thought on that. But
as well,
coming out the other day, the USA now has issued more green cards than the populations of Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, the three first primary states combined. And this has kind of gotten off the radar screen. What's the deal here?
Well, it hasn't gotten off the radar for some of us. And I think it's worth noting that when the National Chamber of Commerce keeps pushing for more visas, and people like Bill Gates have been out there making speeches, and his Microsoft lobbyists have been pushing for more H-1B visas because they say we just can't find enough people to hire who are American citizens that have the technical training that we need, despite the fact that the figures I've seen show we graduate enough Americans every year to satisfy every one of the needs. But right after one of his big speeches about how we've got to have more H-1B visas, Microsoft fired 18,000 people. 18,000. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, we need to look at cutting those back instead of increasing them like the president did. But, wow, John, it's like the president has some idea that he wants to just dilute people that have been educated about the responsibilities of keeping a republic going out there voting. Isn't that a crazy idea?
It's just so frustrating, and we're going to get to him in a second. We're with Congressman Louie Gohmert, Republican, 1st District, Texas. He's the chairman of the Natural Resources Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations and the vice chair of the Judiciary Committee on Crime, Terrorism, and Homeland Security, and he's also a former Texas Court of Appeals judge. Congressman Gohmert, I got to get to this Planned Parenthood fiasco. A lot of people very, very horrified by finding out now that baby body parts, hearts and livers, brains, fingers and toes being harvested for sale almost out of the movie Frankenstein back in 1938. But the other frustrating thing is no debate on defunding them in the House of Representatives. Why?
Well, that's a good question. I know most of our Republican members want to defund them. I mean, that sure is the talk among us. But in order to do that, you have to have leadership that's interested in doing that. And I don't know if they're afraid, we might offend somebody. They might try to change the fact that the Democrats have the real war on women and try to convolute that and make it look like the Republicans do again. They successfully fooled a lot of people in the last election, even though we won the Senate and kept the majority in the House. I think we just need to keep going forward and showing, it's Republicans that don't want babies aborted simply because they're female. I mean, I've got 3 daughters, and our first was born prematurely. And the thought that anybody could be so cold-hearted as to sit there and talk about dismembering a precious child like that, it is just such a nightmare that most of us are troubled to the bone about it. But, then we, like you were playing, we hear Hillary, she doesn't really want to watch the videos because she knows the underlying effort is to defund Planned Parenthood. Look, if you're not going to see the evidence, then you will continue to be as ignorant as she is on the issue.
Congressman, a few moments ago, we had on Congressman from North Carolina, one of my good friends, Walter Jones, your colleague, Republican.
Sure. Yeah, good friend.
He was advocating that people contact their congressman about getting H385 out of rules. This is Mark Meadows' motion to vacate, or to put it in layman's terms, get a vote on a new speaker. I see where they're going with it, but I've followed this stuff a long time. It isn't ever going to get out of rules. So what's really the object behind it?
Well, I think an awful lot of Mark Meadows. He's a courageous guy. And I think the idea was to put it out there, and if constituents make it clear to their representative that they want them signed on as a co-sponsor, then you build enough co-sponsors, then it could be made not as a filed bill that has to go through rules, but then it could be refiled as a privileged motion, which has to come immediately to the floor. So I think the whole purpose is to have it there, so if Americans really want a different speaker, they can let their member of Congress know, put enough pressure on members of Congress, then we get enough co-sponsors, then at that point file it as a privileged motion. So I think that's the idea behind it. But, you pointed out Planned Parenthood. There was no reason we couldn't and shouldn't have taken that issue up, and at least for the skeptics, defunded it until there is more indication that Planned Parenthood has cleaned up their mess. But there are no indications they've done that. But we could have at least had the debate and showed America that we are as outraged as most Americans are.
Look, no question. I think that's a debate that we need to have, and I think that's really what is frustrating to a lot of people. We all understand when things can't get through, or they can't pass, or the president vetoes it and you can't get 2/3. But what you don't understand is when you can't even have the debate, when you're afraid of just talking about the issue and defunding this thing, which a lot of people now are seeing this video, Congressman, and it's very disturbing. And there's going to be a day. People are starting to feel that there's going to be a day of reckoning for all this stuff, whether it's, $20 trillion in debt, $123 trillion of unfunded mandates, or 60 million abortions since Roe v. Wade, and now dismembering babies. I mean, there's going to be a day of reckoning. It always happens throughout history. Speaking of debates, big debate tonight.
Yes, and there will be a day of reckoning, and we know it's coming, so it is really outrageous for us to not be out there dealing with these critical issues. And that's why some of us, after the broken promises in the omnibus back in December, decided, you know what, we got to try to get a different leader anyway.
Well, and I want to make our listeners aware that Congressman Louie Gohmert, who's with us right now, was an actual candidate for Speaker, came up short in that, but not by, another, I think you got 20.
And to be clear on that, John, I knew when I announced that it would make so many people mad because I took away their excuse that they were giving constituents that, I would vote for anybody but Boehner, except nobody's announced, therefore I have to vote for Boehner. That let them keep their committee they wanted or whatever Boehner was doing for them, and also keep constituents at bay. So I knew I'd make people mad, and I was out there, as the Hill confirmed, I was out there telling Republicans, don't vote for me. Boehner will be mad enough that you voted for somebody else. He'll be double mad if you vote for me. Vote for anybody else, but do vote for somebody besides Boehner, and we got very close to the 29 we were shooting for.
You were only a handful away, right? You got 25, you needed 29.
Yeah, and if the freshmen that had promised, had pledged, in fact, that they would vote for somebody besides Boehner had kept their pledge, then we would have been there.
Walter Jones was saying to me today that if you could go back in time or go ahead in time, and that vote was held today, he said that you guys would have had 2 times the 25 Because again, of now the frustration that you've been in control of the Senate for 8 months. You got an expanded majority in the House, and you haven't done anything really.
That's
correct.
Really
frustrating for people.
That's very frustrating when you're in there fighting to try to do what we promised we would do. I mean, right off the bat, the big promise was we would defund the illegal and unconstitutional amnesty. But when Homeland Security was held back by the Speaker as the one thing we wouldn't fully fund, and use that to defund the amnesty, well, most of us knew immediately that wasn't going to work. We would end up caving, and it would play out exactly as it did. So that's one of the things that told us, look, we got to have new leadership. Boehner, nice guy, but he has been our leader for 10 years, since January of 2006, and it's just time for a new leader. It is.
All right, time for a new leader, no question. Got a couple more minutes. Congressman Louie Gohmert, Republican 1st District, Texas, ran against Boehner for Speaker of the House in this past Congressman, I'm in Cleveland live right now at Quicken Loans Center. What do you look for in tonight's debate?
I look for people to stand up and say what they actually believe. And if they say something different than what they actually believe, I expect there's enough people to actually catch them in that kind of untruth. So one of the things that I love about Donald Trump being in the debate, besides him bringing key issues to the front, is the fact that if you want to play a rope-a-dope and, just kind of hide back and not state your positions, with him on the stage, it's going to be extremely difficult to take that kind of tactic through the debates. He's going to force people to come out and say what they really believe, and I think that's a great thing. I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be very interesting, no doubt. Now, final question, and I'll give you some truth in advertising. I predicted back in May that Donald Trump would be the eventual 2016 GOP nominee. Right now, the numbers bearing that out, but it's early. Do you honestly believe that Donald Trump could be the nominee?
Oh, I think it's possible, but so much depends on what happens after this. I mean, I was in 2007. There was no way John McCain could have been the Republican nominee, and in January of 2007, he was running third, actually a distant fourth in Texas. There was no way he could be the nominee, and the establishment made it happen. So I think you can't rule anything out between now and 9 months from now, when so many of the primaries have played out. I think people have got to get engaged. They've got to be serious about it, and we got to make sure that we don't have a nominee that causes people to sit at home like they did the last election, or is such a bad nominee as we had in 2008 that people just can't vote for him.
All right, that's going to be the final word. We're live today at the Quicken Loans Convention Center in Cleveland. We're going to be back right here tomorrow for our post-debate analysis. I think I'm going to be up all night because it goes on forever. Then there's a spin room and all that. So I don't think I'm going to even go to bed. I'll be back on at 6 a.m. Eastern time. Hey, I want to thank Congressman Louie Gohmert for being with us today. He's the chairman of the Natural Resources Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations and the vice chair of the Judiciary Subcommittee on Crime. Hey, Congressman, thanks for being with us, sir.